Welcome to the Content Podcast, conversations with Silicon Valley's creatives. I'm Daniel Garcia, your host and the cultivator of Content Magazine, published by SV Creates.
Hello.
Today we talk with the founding duo of nonprofit news outlet San José Spotlight. Josh Barousse is the director of development, and Ramona Giwargis is the editor and a journalist. Hey, Ramona and Josh, how you guys doing today?
Hey, good morning, Daniel. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this is about, you started Spotlight in January 2019. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, so that's about, I guess this is a year and a half, 2 years, something along those lines.
Yeah, we just started our third year. It went by really fast. We're losing track of time.
Yeah, and so I imagine last year was a pretty active news year for San Jose.
Absolutely.
Yes, it was. We had, between the COVID-19 pandemic, historic election, the George Floyd protests, and, this sort of reckoning with systemic racism. It's just, there was a lot. It was nonstop.
Yeah. And then in the midst of that, you guys had a new addition to your family as well, correct?
That's
Exactly.
right. We did. We had a baby, Vienna.
Yeah, that's crazy. So now the mission and the reason that you guys launched San Jose Spotlight was because you, in the interview that we had with you, Josh, you actually said that, it's that San Jose is kind of like a desert for news and journalism. So what's your perspective now after 3 years of doing this as far as like the landscape of news and journalism here in San Jose?
And you're right. And a lot's changed since then. It's been interesting to see how everything's evolved since we launched. As you mentioned, we really wanted to fill a void in local news coverage. We felt that some other publications in the South Bay were getting bigger and bigger and growing regionally and really losing focus on local coverage. So that's what we wanted to provide is that local coverage and also really elevate the voices that are traditionally not heard. You look at marginalized communities or underserved communities like East San Jose and want to make sure that those stories are being told and those voices are being elevated.
One thing I noticed, Josh, you were saying that some of the news organizations are getting bigger and bigger. I think he meant smaller and smaller.
Yeah, they're not growing.
Yeah.
I meant they're growing outward.
I think he meant like their scope is becoming more regional because they have fewer reporters. Like what happened basically at the Merc was that, because they laid off like a quarter of the staff, they wanted us to do more regional stories so that they could run them both in the East Bay Times and the San Jose Mercury News. Basically have one reporter doing more, covering more ground so that they could use our stories in more ways. But not necessarily that the newsroom was growing or the size was growing of the newsroom.
Yeah, that's cool. Now, and the model is a nonprofit model. That means that you're not really based upon advertising, but you're doing partnerships and memberships and kind of like grants and foundations, right? How's that going so far of drumming up interest and audience?
Yeah, definitely. Well, that is one of the things that does set us apart, makes us very unique. In the South Bay, we're the first nonprofit news organization in San Jose. And I firmly believe nonprofit journalism is the future of our industry.
As Ramona mentioned, we're the city's first nonprofit news organizations, and as she mentioned, the ad revenue model of journalism is really dying, and the nonprofit model is the fastest growing trend in journalism today. There's now more than 250 nonprofit newsrooms throughout the country.
Mm-hmm.
And we have 5 diverse revenue streams, so we don't have to rely on one.
Yeah.
And it's all community supported. As you alluded to, it's all individual and organizational memberships. Sustaining whether it's they want to pay monthly or annually, and they get member benefits. We also get apply for foundational grants. We're also soliciting major gifts from organizations that can help us in a more significant way.
Yeah.
And then we're doing our events. It's another way to really spur civic engagement is we're hosting educational forums on important, local topics, and we're getting organizations to help sponsor those
Mm-hmm,
events.
mm-hmm,
So event sponsorships is another revenue stream. And lastly, we are doing advertising, but solely just in our daily newsletter.
mm-hmm.
Nothing on the website, just in our daily newsletter.
Yeah, so that it. So those would be traditional kind of advertising where they're not necessarily uh, they're looking for eyeballs. They're looking for the ROI type thing.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's just really to supplement our revenue generation.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. So yeah, the nonprofit news um, outlet is not. It's been going on for a while. There's nationally, there's definitely that kind of like the model for that. What do you see in San Jose as far as launching that kind of media here? Has it been been the reception of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. In the beginning, it was a little bit difficult, we'll be honest. And the reason was that, folks were not used to thinking of journalism, as a philanthropic cause.
Yeah.
You think about philanthropy, you think about supporting homelessness and, education programs and so many wonderful causes. But I think it took a long time for people to realize and view journalism
Yeah.
as a cause, a public cause that they need to support just the same way we support our libraries, arts,
Yeah.
the symphony, right? Any of these things that make civic life better and more engaging. So it took a while for Josh and I to really kind of change the thinking of some of the donors that we were talking to.
Yeah.
We would hear oftentimes from foundations that we don't fund journalism, and
Yeah.
we're like, okay, we know you don't fund journalism. Not a lot of folks do, but certainly you fund civic engagement and you care about strengthening our democracy, and these are things that you want to defend the First Amendment. I mean, these are things you care about,
Yeah.
and these are things that we're doing. And we're writing about housing and homelessness. We're writing about education and transportation, and all these topics that these foundations are working on.
Yeah.
We're covering those topics and we're writing about them every day.
So then, yeah, that's interesting. Then, what is the role of journalism then within society? I mean, I want to hear your kind of take on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, obviously, I'm biased. I am a
Yeah.
journalist, but I think it's just such a critical part of our democracy. I think we cannot have a democracy without a free press and journalists who are empowered to ask those tough questions, to go into our communities, to tell these stories that no one else is telling, to lift up voices of people who traditionally are not heard, who are underserved and underrepresented, marginalized communities, like Josh mentioned, and then holding power to account. I will say, if journalists are not the ones asking those tough questions of our elected leaders, requesting records, looking through those records, who's going to do that work, right?
Yeah.
Who's going to do that job? So we take that role very seriously, of educating the public, holding powerful people accountable, and then really highlighting injustice, highlighting what the social ills are, and then also solutions. It's not enough to just write about everything that's wrong
Yeah.
in San Jose, but to also highlight, how can we fix it? How can we move forward as a city? What are other cities doing when it comes to certain problems and certain challenges that we're facing in San Jose that other cities are facing as well?
Yeah. That's good. So now the two of you, well, Josh, you kind of came more from kind of like a policy governmental side, right? And then Ramona, you come from a journalism side. Um,
Yes.
and so now that with Spotlight, it's kind of like you two, in some ways, I guess, Josh, your role is more of what would be called like either like the business development or um, the publisher, right? Is that kind of your role of helping the model of the machine work? Is that your main job?
Exactly. Yeah, we both combined forces,
Mm-hmm.
to launch this endeavor, and it's exactly right. So Ramona handles everything on the editorial side, and I handle everything on the business side, all the revenue generation, the event coordination,
Mm-hmm.
strategic partnerships, things of that sort. So that's kind of how we
Yeah.
work together.
Yeah.
It's really a perfect marriage, not just personally, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a perfect marriage personally too, but professionally because he brings to the table the skills that I don't have. Like I've never fundraised. I don't know how to ask for money. I think I've never even asked my mom for $10, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So he brings to the table that expertise in fundraising and the ability to campaign and to create successful campaigns. And then obviously, I'm bringing to the table the journalism side and, the editorial background and experience.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's why I mean, even when I started content, right? The flaw that I saw is that I had no one on my launch team in the beginning of it that had any publishing business
Right.
development skill. So it was always kind of a struggle. Um, so okay, what's it like? Normally, you want, the traditional kind of thing for newspapers and media is that the publishing and the editorial are, kind of like two sides of the camp, and
Mhm.
they don't really want to talk to each other, so things aren't tainted. But you guys are, I mean, like this is definitely the model of publishing and editorial sleeping together, right? Um, what's
Yeah.
so? How do you guys balance that out? I mean, there's obviously, of course, even nonprofits. There's still a pool of you need to increase distribution, circulation, numbers, and all that kind of stuff. How do you guys work out that kind of relation, even personally and then professionally, and even news wise, of balancing that act between telling the story and finding and getting it out there and reaching the right person?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And one thing I just wanted to share too about the model that we have and sort of mending together these two worlds of editorial versus what would have traditionally been
Mm-hmm.
advertising or
Mm-hmm.
revenue. And you're right, Daniel. I think traditionally in the newspaper world, we were kind of kept apart. We were in different parts of the building. We didn't really talk to
Yeah.
one another, and that was done on purpose. But I think those days are gone. I really feel like now everybody's fundraising, everybody's in the canoe, everybody's moving toward this mission of helping us become
Yeah.
sustainable. But we do have some safeguards in place. For example, we have a policy of editorial
Hmm.
independence, and that says that no matter how much a donor gives, they will never get to tell us what to write, how to write, what to cover. Like there's truly a firewall in
Yeah.
that sense of, donors don't get to control
Yeah.
content. But I think we've also realized like we all need to be involved with fundraising in order for us to keep this going and to be successful. And then to your point, this model gives us the ability to not have to chase
Yeah.
clicks, not have to chase page views. Certainly we measure our analytics. We want to see how many readers we're getting and how long they're staying on our page and all of that
Yeah.
stuff because that helps us figure out what's resonating with our audience, right? What type of stories do they want from us? But I think the difference is we're not basing editorial decisions around that. Like I'll never tell the reporters they have to write something because it's going to get a lot of
Yeah.
page views. In fact, we write stories that we know aren't going to get a lot of page views, but they're important for the public to know.
Yeah.
For example, the budget, how the money is being spent, follow the money kind of stories. Those might not be the sexiest topics, but certainly they're topics that, I think are critical for the public to know and to understand what the government is doing with their
Yeah,
money.
yeah, that's good. I mean, so then of course, you do. I mean, this is the time of big data and finding out stuff and clicks and all that kind of stuff. Is there something that you see in San Jose that for whatever reason does get more attention than other kind of stores? Like you mentioned, the budget maybe not, but what's some of the things that just seems like people are very interested in?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Right now, it's all COVID, COVID,
Yeah,
COVID, COVID. And I think that's probably true for other publishers. Everybody's really, even a year into the pandemic, very interested in what's next, the vaccine distribution, and how we're going to go back to normal or the quote unquote new normal, whatever
yeah,
that looks like. But I also think one thing that's been really interesting and unique for me to notice is how strongly our audience favors those hyper local
yeah,
stories. Even though we knew there was a need for local, just San Jose local journalism, I think we didn't quite realize it until we started getting in there and realizing that some of the stories that are just about what happened down the street from your house or the neighborhood commission or what's going on at your kid's school, like those are the stories that do really well, and the stories of people doing great things in the community, the heroes we call them in the
yeah,
spotlight profiles. Sometimes those do surprisingly well, and we realize it's because people like reading about their neighbors and their friends and people that they know, and that's what I think really makes local journalism so
yeah.
unique and very rewarding.
Yeah. That's cool. Um, so then, for the two of you, how do you manage the production schedule and a marriage and a newborn or an infant or a toddler now? um, what do you guys do, kind of like to safeguard the balance of work life play?
Right. It really is chaos by design. You're right. I mean, it's certainly challenging, balancing both work and baby, and trying to have a personal life. Over dinner we're still talking
Yeah,
about work, but we do as best as we can to really go over our schedules either the night before or that morning. Like I have a call at 10 a.m. or you have a call at 1 p.m.
yeah,
So the other can be watching the baby, and we just make sure that we set boundaries. When we first launched, before
yeah,
pre-baby, our first year, we were staying up till 1,
yeah.
2 a.m. every night doing work, and now we're setting those boundaries, trying to be done, by 11 or 12.
Josh, last night we went to bed. Last night we went to bed at 1
Yeah, yeah,
a.m.
there you go. Yeah.
Well, we tried. We shoot for
I
that.
think I turned off my laptop at exactly that time. But yeah, we're trying. We're trying
Yeah.
to do a lot
Well,
better.
Ramona, how many stories then are you doing? Are you more kind of in the delegation, kind of editor in chief role now?
Yeah. So I'm not writing as much. Mostly I'm overseeing, story assignments. I'm helping with editing and, kind of shaping the content in terms of what we're going to be covering and planning for the week. So I don't write as much. Once in a while, I'll jump in and help with writing if it's something quick and easy, or if there's even a bigger picture
Hmm.
piece, like an investigative piece or something like that. I'll jump in and help the reporter, but mostly it's just kind of behind the scenes now.
Yeah. Yeah. So what would you say then, Spotlight, what would you categorize, or how would you define the voice that you're looking for?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one thing that we really prioritize at San Jose Spotlight, and Josh alluded to this earlier, is the voices of the minority communities and underserved communities. Obviously, I'm a woman of color myself, and something that I've noticed over the years in journalism, now 13 years in
Hmm.
journalism, is that voice is not always elevated. And so, finding real people who are impacted by policies. We cover policy, politics, and
Yeah.
government. That's
Yeah.
our niche. But I think one thing I always tell our journalists is that behind every single policy that's made in that big, shiny 18th floor building
Yeah.
is a real person whose life is going to be impacted in some way. So let's find those people and let's tell those stories, and they should be the center of our journalism. And again, prioritizing East San Jose, for example. We made a deliberate attempt to hire journalists who speak Spanish and who speak
Hmm.
Vietnamese, because we really wanted to build relationships in those immigrant communities and be able to, again, elevate their voices and tell their stories. So I think that's really what we strive for, and that's what sort of sets us apart.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there any stories or features or threads that you guys are working on that you're kind of shocked and upset that don't get as much attention as you think they deserve? Is there anything like that you kind of find?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm trying to think if there's like a specific example I can share, but there are some times when we put a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of effort into a story, and we think, oh,
Yeah.
this is big news. Like everybody's
Right.
going to want this. Everyone's going to think this is important, and then it doesn't do as
Yeah.
well, or maybe it doesn't generate as many page views. Maybe it's not getting the same number of clicks or views as other stories. Um, and it's surprising to me, like lately, one thing I have noticed is we've written some stories about gun control,
Hmm.
and even though that's a very important issue right now, given that we've had
Yeah.
two mass shootings in recent weeks, but those stories for some reason just haven't resonated, I
Hmm.
guess, as
Hmm.
much with the public. I'm not sure if there's maybe we're being burned out with that topic, or it's not as local, so sometimes folks don't gravitate toward topics that are not as local, or if it's something that is already being covered in national media and in regional and national
Yeah.
newspapers. If we try to do it, it just doesn't land as well with our
Yeah.
audience, because I think they're able to get that information
Yeah.
elsewhere.
Hmm. So the hyper local is very much kind of like the desire that's here.
Yeah, at least with our audience, that's what we
Yeah.
found.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, I think you guys found your niche. That's good. What have you learned just about yourself personally through this process of launching San Jose Spotlight, and then what have you learned about um, the the industry just in those last few years? So, Josh, why don't you go first?
Sure. Good question, Daniel. I would say what I've learned about myself since we launched San Jose Spotlight is that, frankly, I'd never thought of myself being an entrepreneur, having that entrepreneurial
Hmm.
spirit. But once you just jump in, it's just you're just all in. You really just kind of rise to the occasion.
Yeah,
If there's something that you don't do personally, then it doesn't
yeah,
get done. The organization, the right, and this, Daniel, and the trains just don't keep moving. So really, it's on our shoulders. If we have great staff and they contribute, tremendously. They do great work, but a lot of the top decisions and actions that we make really have a significant impact on the organization. So just the fact that you can be entrepreneurial and really just have fun with it.
yeah,
It's you live, it's your livelihood, and whatever you put into it is what you get out of it. So it's been really rewarding to see it in that
yeah,
vein.
yeah. Cool.
And then I think for the industry, and a lot about what we talked about before, just seeing the shrinking of local
Mm.
coverage, and us, filling that void. We It's been really, really eye opening experience. Just hearing from so many readers that they acknowledge that there has been a lack of local coverage, and not only in San Jose, but when we're interacting with a lot of newsrooms throughout the country, who are also filling that void, and other news deserts throughout the country, they're all saying the same thing, that, the fact of the matter is that these legacy papers, may not, they're not, providing the service and providing the coverage that readers want. And really, it's all up to us, to be there and fill that
Yeah,
void.
yeah, cool. Yeah, Ramona, what about you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like what I've learned over this last year and couple years with launching San Jose Spotlight is just how resilient
Hmm.
I can be. The resiliency that comes with when you really believe in something and you believe in it with all your heart, you feel it in your bones. There's just no failing. There's no
Yeah,
plan B. I often say that when Josh and I
Right.
started San Jose Spotlight, we had no plan B. And a lot of folks said, well, what will happen if it doesn't take off? What will happen if it doesn't work? And I didn't have a plan because to me, it had to work. We were going to
yeah,
make it work. There was no other option. And that's how much I believed in it. That's how much I believed in my community, our city of San Jose. And we left full-time jobs, moved from a much cheaper state in Nevada back to
yeah,
San Jose, a very expensive part
yeah,
of the country, and lived off of our savings for 6 months, but did it because we believed again wholeheartedly that San Jose needs this, and that that we are doing a public service for our city. And I think what I've learned about the industry is that it is constantly changing. We know that. But just getting a sense of the fact that it is now a two-way
hmm.
conversation. I think traditionally in the newsrooms that I've worked in, kind of legacy newspapers, it was very top down. It was very one-sided where, the newspaper tells you how to vote and what to
Yeah,
think and what the new restaurants are. And now with our model, it's really a two-way conversation. Like we talk to our readers all the time. We do reader surveys, we solicit questions that they want answers to, and we go and find those answers. We create events based on topics that they think are important. We're doing an event coming up on April 14th about rent relief. And that was sparked by so many questions about how do I get relief if I'm a landlord or if I'm a
yeah,
tenant and I've lost my income because of COVID? What do I do? We launched an event answering those questions, and that's coming up next month. So, yeah, so I really think we're listening. We're the community's newsroom. And that is a change that's not traditionally been, it's not traditionally been that way in the journalism
yeah,
industry.
yeah. What would you say then for what advice would you give to anybody who's looking to get into journalism, either from a career side, maybe from that from the financial side, and then also from the skill set? What's advice you guys would have for that?
Yeah, I would say be adaptable, because it is changing. I think the days of journalists in print saying, I'm only going to do print, I'm only going to write, I'm a writer, and that's all I want to do. Those days are probably gone. I think now journalists have to be able to do everything. We're taking our own photos, we're taking videos, Many journalists are podcasting,
Yeah.
as you know. We're learning new social media skills. We're learning how to write better headlines, something that traditionally, editors would do. So I think we're learning that the industry is changing and that we have to change with it. We have to innovate. Otherwise, we're going to die. And I think with that comes constant training and constant learning. So don't stop learning. Take those courses you can online. Um, Continue to try to expand your skill set into all topics and areas. I often tell also college journalists or students who are thinking about pursuing journalism to also think about majoring in other things as well. Because, of
Yeah.
course, major in journalism, learn how to write, take news writing classes. That's critical. You have to be a good writer. But I think knowing stuff about politics and knowing about science and knowing a little bit about arts and knowing a little bit about everything is really going to be important, because in your first journalism
Yeah.
job, you're pretty much asked to write about everything and to learn everything really quickly. So it helps to know a little bit about a large variety of
Yeah.
topics.
Yeah.
Josh, do you have anything?
Yeah, I would say in addition to that, when Ramona mentions, being adaptable, also fundraising and being, part of the business side. And, all, nonprofit newsrooms and small independent newsrooms are going through this where, as we mentioned earlier, everybody needs to be in the canoe where they're, again, helping out with everything on the editorial side, but also helping with fundraising and, moderating events and planning events and spreading the word. And everybody's kind of doing their part. So yeah, that's really been an interesting change, and something that we're really sharing with our staff when they're coming on board, and we're having trainings and staff meetings, and constantly checking in to see how we can help you if they may not feel comfortable with all these changes, but making sure that we're also there for
Yeah.
support.
So you're saying it's a little bit more than it's not so much that the writers are over here, even the photographers are over there, the videographers are over there, the layouts over here, and publishing and advertising's over there. What you're saying is that it's kind of much more of a collective, and that everybody needs to see that the growth
Exactly.
and the sustainability is everybody to kind of pitch in.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of our best fundraisers are the reporters
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
because,
Yeah.
they've built name recognition and they've built, a following and relationships in the community. So when, you receive an email from a certain journalist, or you get a phone call from a journalist who you know and you've been reading for a long time, it's very different than hearing from Josh and I all the
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
which they hear from us a lot. So, so I think it helps, and they're the best ambassadors of their
Yeah.
work. Helping people understand that by supporting San Jose Spotlight, you're supporting someone's job, you're
Yeah.
supporting someone's salary, you're supporting someone's dream. These are folks who went to school for journalism and dreamed of working in the industry, and you're making it possible for them to continue to do the great award-winning work that we've done. So when you explain it to folks that way, like you're actually helping me be able to continue this work, I think it's very compelling, and it's hard not to want to
Yeah.
support journalism in general and to support San
Yeah.
Jose Spotlight.
So, Josh, now, you were in kind of like politics and worked at City Hall, and then you worked for Home, right? Kind of a nonprofit community service.
Correct.
What for you? What I think even as we've been talking, you can really see that San Jose Spotlight is really like a public service for the community. Josh, what for you? How did you get involved in kind of like that kind of realm of policy and I think service? How did that come about in your life?
Sure, good question. Really, my interest really sparked when I was undergraduate at San Jose State. Just getting involved with local community service learning and social justice
Mm-hmm.
advocacy. Got involved with Dr. Scott Myers Lipton and the Gulf Coast Civic Works Project, and really that's where I grew my passion for government and
Mm-hmm.
politics. We're advocating for congressional
Mm-hmm.
bills. Learn more about the legislative process. How to do grassroots
Yeah.
organizing. Reaching out to media. That was actually something that we did in my social action class as
Yeah.
undergraduate. So yeah, it was a really unique learning experience, and really I decided then I wanted to pursue a career in public
Yeah.
service.
Yeah.
And really today it's still the same. It's still public service. It's just in the form of journalism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear somebody in the background.
This is the work from home
Yeah,
life that we just talked about.
yeah, it is. Actually, well, is Josh running to do the bottle white? Could you answer that's
Yeah, so he's learning to
okay.
do it.
So yeah, have you asked you? I'll ask you the same question then. For you, I mean, being journalism, I mean, it seems like you see that as public service. How did journalism and writing, um, how did you get into that? And then, what's your kind of view of your passion?
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, I was always a very naturally curious person. I wanted to know why.
You know,
Sorry,
okay,
he's getting the bottle. We're
that's all
almost
right.
done here. Do you want me to keep going?
Sure, yeah, keep going.
Or
This is real life.
okay, this is real life. So yes, this is Vienna,
Hi,
everybody.
Vienna.
It's bottle time. Her dad's getting it, so yay. Okay, so definitely learned early on that I was a very curious person. I always just wanted to know why something was the way that it
Hmm.
was. The teacher would you speak about a lesson or teach a lesson, and I was one of the first people whose hands would go up at the end of the lesson because I wanted to know more. Like I had all these additional questions about why
Yeah.
and how come. And so that natural curiosity, I think, is what kind of led me into journalism, knowing that I love to write. I was a good writer. It was one of the things that I enjoyed the most. It didn't feel like work to me. It felt like just I was having fun and getting
Hmm.
paid for it. And I think for me, it really clicked when I realized that not only is it fun and I'm good at it, but I can actually make a difference. Like something I write has the power to change a policy or to
Hmm.
make something better for someone. I think one of the first stories I ever wrote was for my high school newspaper, Pioneer High School in San
Hmm.
Jose, and it led to change. It led to some
That's cool.
change in terms of this problem that the campus was facing. And I knew right then, even in high school, that we have the power to use the pen and use our words to make a difference in our city and make a difference in our community. I think that's what makes us wake up every morning and want to do this
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. That's cool. That's awesome. What would you guys say? What as you have opportunity to kind of engage with business and politics and policy and those kind of things and hear people on the street. Um, what do you see? What's like one of the top things that you could see that needs to change for San Jose to be a stronger community?
Oh, that's a good question.
You
Do you have
know,
any thoughts?
a few things. I would say definitely, resident attitudes, and being more inclusive and open to, policies like affordable
Mm-hmm.
housing and things of that sort. And I would also say political
Hmm.
will, just developing political will from a lot of our elected leaders, making sure that that they're really independent thinkers. They're not letting anybody influence their thinking, and they're making the best decision for
Yeah.
residents.
Yeah. That's that's cool. Ramona, did you have a response to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Josh did a good job of explaining that. And, I feel like sometimes in San Jose, we have this, I don't know what the word is, but like we feel like we're not good enough or we're in the shadows of San Francisco or other big
Mm-hmm.
cities that San Jose is forgotten somehow or we're behind the curve. But I love San Jose. There's nowhere in the world I'd rather live than San Jose. And I feel like that civic pride sometimes is
Hmm.
missing. And I know we're not perfect. I know there are problems. I know, there are real concerns that folks raise about the quality of life and the cost of living. Those are
Yeah.
real. But I think just realizing that we have so much to be proud of as San Joseans, and we're making progress every day. And I've never met a community that is more kind in terms of the generosity that they've shown us with San Jose
Mm-hmm.
Spotlight. People, strangers, send us checks because they read one story
Yeah.
that they
Awesome.
liked. So the generosity is there. The community is kind. It's just a matter of knowing that we are good enough. We are good enough in San Jose, and we don't have to compete with San
Yeah.
Francisco. And I wish more people felt
Yeah.
that way.
That's cool. Awesome. Okay, so let's go to the ugly topic of fake news.
Uh-oh.
Fake news and truth and bias, though, all those kind of crazy things in journalism. And even the idea of, I mean, you have a limited staff, you have limited budget, you have limited time, limited space, what how do you determine what is going to be told, and then what's the voice and the viewpoint of that story that's being told? How do you guys manage that and shape that?
Yeah, as far as, making sure that we're reporting factual information, right, in this era
Yeah.
of misinformation. Yeah. Well, that's a good question. A lot of times we get tips, from the
Yeah.
public, all kinds of tips. And sometimes folks have an agenda. That's, I think, true for any industry and
Sure.
any, any situation. But I think it always falls upon us, and particularly the editors, when we're weeding these things out, to make sure, to double check things, to, there's a saying in journalism: if your mom tells you she loves you, double check it.
Yeah.
You have to check everything. Don't assume. Even if you think that something is true or it sounds like it could be true, go out there and independently verify and make sure. Because I think that's how we, catch a lot of mistakes, and we have to say no to a lot of stories where we realize that this is not based on fact. This is based on someone's opinion or someone's vendetta against another individual. So, really just scrutinizing the tips that we receive and scrutinizing the information that we receive and double checking everything to make sure that it's real, and not amplifying misinformation. I think one of the things that has happened in the last election cycle is we've seen a lot of lies and mistruths being
Yeah.
spun, and particularly around housing issues. There were flyers that were sent in the last election cycle that claimed, for example, a policy called opportunity housing, would allow, large gray high-rise buildings in single family neighborhoods. Well, that's not true. That's just not possible. The policy only allows duplexes, triplexes, and
Hmm.
fourplexes. So in that vein, we have to
Yeah.
correct that. We have to correct that misinformation and not, perpetuate it. If we report on those flyers, those political flyers that are claiming these things, it's very important for us to do fact checks and to make sure people know the truth before they go to the polls. Um, so yeah, I hope that answers the
Yeah. No.
question.
Yeah. That's it. Does. Well, let's take something even just like I feel like the truth is very. It's not black and white. It's very complex, especially if you're dealing with
Yeah.
politics and constituencies and all those kind of things. To to present something like housing, something like even okay, just recently, the competition with Confluence, San Jose, that was
Oh, yeah.
just announced, the Breeze of Innovation, right? You guys did a piece on it as well that's coming out. Um, and there, even on that, there's split viewpoints, right? Of like the funds could be used
Yeah.
different, that land could be used different. Why are people spending, so much time on this? And, even to bring in more tourism to build land, how then how do you kind of approach something that has that kind of have nuances of the reality of what's going on? How do you guys manage that and approach that?
Yeah. Well, I think we have to remember that, everybody is entitled to an
Mm-hmm.
opinion, even if we don't like it or the founders of Urban Confluence don't like it. We have to be able to give voice to everybody. And I know yesterday on Twitter, our story got like, I don't know, 25 retweets, and many of them were people saying, "This is ugly. I don't
Sure.
like this. This looks like this. It should look
Right.
like that. There's no way this is going to rival, like, the Space Needle in Seattle, or Cloudgate in
Yeah.
Chicago." And we can't censor that. That's their opinions, and that's something that they're allowed to have. So I think just remembering that there's always going to be opposition. There's always going to be a variance of
Mm-hmm.
viewpoints. And in my opinion, that's a good thing, right? We don't want a society where everyone says yes, 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 that's great,
Right.
that's perfect, that's how we should be doing things. I think that that discourse, as long as it's done civilly, is really important for our city and for um, a project as big as this that's going to make a permanent change in
Yeah.
downtown.
Yeah. That's cool. Well, that's good. What is coming up next for you guys? What do you see for 2021? As even though I just saw someone put a post that it's only 9 months till Christmas, but it still feels like it's just started. So, 2021. What's some of the things that you guys have planned that you're excited about?
Yeah, good question. So again, now we're in our third year. And we're really, we really want to turn a corner and really grow and expand our
Mm-hmm.
operation. So many readers are reaching out now asking, "Are you going to be covering Cupertino, or can you cover
Yeah.
Sunnyvale?" So ideally, we want to grow our team and start covering a lot of those other communities, like Cupertino, Sunnyvale, Milpitas,
Yeah.
Campbell, that border, San Jose and Santa
Yeah.
Clara. There's a lot of important issues. Yeah, right around a lot of important issues around housing and transportation. You know, of course, you got the Apple campus in
Mm-hmm.
Cupertino and a lot of tech businesses in Sunnyvale. So a lot of business, related stories there as well. So yeah, that's ideally what we want to do. Hopefully get a reporter up in Sacramento at the state
Yeah.
capitol.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah. All right. Awesome. Okay. And then last thing, just to Josh and then Ramona individually, what's your personal kind of like mission? Like what drives you? What's the thought or the philosophy that kind of makes you do what you do?
Great question. I'll start. I would say public service. Public service is the reason why I get up in the
Mm.
morning. And again, this is public service, but just in the form of
Yeah.
journalism, and the fact that even though I personally am not writing, but the fact that I'm able to contribute to our great team, the great work they're doing, like Ramona said, really shedding light on wrongdoing and holding those powerful accountable and really doing the public service journalism that creates
Yeah.
change in our system.
Awesome.
So that's really what
Yeah.
drives me.
Cool. And Ramona?
Yeah, public service is important. I'm very aligned with that, Josh. I think for me, it is the idea of being able to make change in our community. Journalism is hard work.
Yeah.
It really is, especially in the beginning when you're first getting into your career. The pay is not great. There's a lot of long deadlines, a lot of pressure. It's truly a calling. You have to have that fire in your belly to wake up every day and say, I'm going to do this work. And it's not
Yeah.
easy. So I feel like the thing that keeps me going is when we do see a story of ours make a difference, like it leads to a new policy or leads to some kind of
Mm.
change. That just re-energizes me and renews my spirit. And now I wake up thinking I'm going to work 10 times harder than I ever have before.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like I'm very driven also by the fact that our community, we hear from them every day how valuable this is to their lives, how much they need us, how much they rely on us. I open your newsletter first thing in the morning. I wake up with San Jose Spotlight's newsletter and things like that. Like that's what really makes me feel that we're doing the right thing and we just have to keep going and work as hard as we can to keep doing this work.
Awesome.
And to make it sustainable. Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, I really appreciate what you guys are doing, and I'm super excited that you're into your third year, and look forward to 30, 30 more, right? So yeah, thank you for your work that you're doing, and thank you for just focusing and delivering us the news for San Jose. As a citizen of San Jose, I really appreciate it, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Daniel.
Yeah.
And thank you for the work you're doing with content.
Sure.
We appreciate you very much. And thanks for having us on today.
Yeah.
This was great.
Thank you. Good. Well, then hopefully I'll see you out and about around town soon.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for your great work, Daniel.
Thanks. Thank you for your time. Okay.
Yeah, great reconnecting.
All right. Yeah, good talking to you. Bye.
Bye.
To find out more about San Jose Spotlight, visit their website, sanjosespotlight.com, and their Instagram at sjspotlight. Thank you for listening to the Content Magazine podcast. Follow us on social media at Content Mag. Visit our website to become a member and help us to continue to tell the stories of the local creatives. This episode's music is Tang by Chris Inman, who is featured in issue 13.2. Follow him on Spotify at Chris Inman and on Instagram at chris.inman, as well as his record label, Orange Label Records.